Well, how's it going, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon. This is Scott with ReadySquirrel.com. Smash that like button, give us some thumbs up, and make a comment down below. This channel could use some love. Excuse me. Today's video, drone surveillance for prepping in SHTF. As usual, you can find this article on ReadySquirrel.com. I've got some video links down below that you may want to take a look at. There's some drone footage in a couple different cities relating to some of the recent activities. So, drone surveillance for prepping and shit hit the fan. 19 uses for a prepper drone during SHTF. Drones are flying surveillance cameras or eyes in the sky. They have multiple uses pre- and post-apocalypse. Drones replace large search groups and allow for surveillance under high-threat situations without risking human life. The downside of drones is you need a way to charge the batteries, and many capabilities are lost without GPS satellites. So in a true SHTF situation, if we lose our satellites, if we're without power, you're going to have alternate sources to power the battery charge up. If you're advanced in prepping, if you're in a large prepper group or something similar to that, I think that drones are definitely something worth looking into. So there are some drawbacks, but they're still worth considering if you have basic prepping items squared away. This is not something you should be looking into unless it's just a hobby, or if you want to take that route. There is one route I could suggest. If you want to take the hobby or side hustle route, learn how to use them. There's people making a living doing this. Professional video, professional photos, survey of commercial construction. There's people that are working with realtors, especially with like high value property. I live in Florida. I don't live in a high value property, but there's a lot of them around. You know, anything that's right on the bay or on the Gulf or on the ocean. Those kind of houses usually have big tickets, and the realtors get a big payout, so they're willing to pay to have drone footage and a video done of a property. Videos of hotels and resorts, disaster and emergency preparedness, post-natural disaster assessment, insurance assessment, and search and rescue. And those are just some of the things that I could find off the cuff. So the reason I went to the bottom there and looked at that is I think that's the one situation where if you're cash poor, you might stretch and consider getting a drone and start learning how to use it. So again, 19 uses for a prepper drone. Perimeter surveillance. Some of this stuff is common sense, but it's also really super interesting. And I think at first glance, drones do not seem like a good prepper tool. But I think if you can prepare and have an alternate power source, I think they can actually keep you alive. Perimeter surveillance. Drones are good for neighborhood security because you can respond to specific locations when a threat arises. Basically, the drone takes place of your eyes, so you don't have to be on the ground in front of whatever's going on. You can be up in the sky looking down, checking out, and you don't have to do physical recon. So perimeter surveillance with a drone is good to keep humans out of harm's way and allows small groups to spread resources too thin. Allows groups to not spread resources too thin. So, if you've got a large perimeter, you have a limited amount of people, the drone's going to allow you to react to a specific area instead of trying to cover everything at once because you won't have enough people to do that. 2, drone makes a good point man. Use a drone if you're trying to get out of highly congested area, unsafe for bugging out. Use your drone for forward recon. Use it as an eye in the sky to walk you out of a situation to avoid actually walking into an unknown threat. You've got it up, you're moving ahead, you're advancing, and you use the drone to avoid crowds, groups of miscreants, illegal checkpoints, fires, fights, congested roadways, down bridges, and etc. They're good for disaster and emergency response in a post-SHTF situation or during a catastrophe. Try not to interfere with emergency response personnel, but if you're doing a search for somebody or you're looking for somebody, a drone is going to cover a lot more area than even groups of people on foot. Drones good for reconnaissance roles, allow for advanced warning of forces on the move or entering your area, track direction, distance traveled, and the force's size. Drone acts as a force multiplier, which the definition of that is the ability to accomplish greater feats than without a drone. But that definition there is basically technology in general. It's a technology. A force multiplier is a technology that allows a small group of people to accomplish what it would take a really large group of people to do without that technology. Again, the drone replaces multiple people on the ground. This is useful for small groups or individual families that don't have the resources for recon. Think like the Spartans, rush to fill the gaps, move resources where they're needed, search huge areas that would take days or weeks on the ground. The average solid, well-built drone has a battery. On one battery, it will fly an average of 30 minutes. So that's a lot of ground to cover. Especially when you're if you have a bug out location, you're going to kind of know where the weak spots are, and you're going to know where to look. You know how to get in and how to get out, and that's the path of least resistance. That's probably where any kind of threat would come from. Search and rescue. Use drones in post SHTF situations to save lives by pinpointing injured or lost people quickly with fewer resources. General safety, we've kind of already covered this. The drone shows you what's out there and takes the place of moving into an area on foot. Direct ground recon is more dangerous than flying over with a drone. A bug out recon, use the drone in place of a point man as you move towards your goal. Use drone information to avoid difficult geography or physical threats. To search for marauders, mobs, or armed bands. I think a drone is particularly useful in urban areas during times of unrest. Certain groups are threatening to enter neighborhoods and burn homes. See them coming and respond accordingly. Ability to assess damage quickly. Imagine you live where there are 4 possible escape routes. 2 of those routes are over bridges. 1 is via ocean, and the other is a highly traveled road with bottlenecks. This is actually my scenario. You could hike to each exit route to assess the situation, or you can send up a drone. You go on foot to conserve battery until you hear or see something troubling, and send the drone up to scout it out. So if you want to conserve your batteries, you can still go out on foot, but still go slow, observe. That whole situational awareness thing. And if you hear sound, see smoke, you could throw your drone, throw your drone up, take the drone up as far, 400 feet, and then, do recon to see what's going on. Survey areas to find resources. I skipped one. Let's see here. We were on assess damage quickly. We did the 4 possible escape routes. You could hike to each route to assess the situation or send the drone up, or you could do both. You could go on foot to conserve battery power until you hear or see something troubling and send the drone up to scout it out. Okay, I already said that. Design or planning of your bug out location or your bug in location. Your off-grid cabin, your cabin in the desert, your sailboat, whatever it is. The bird's eye view from a drone gives you the ability to see relationships between ground objects and understand security in a different light. Drones, that bird in the sky view or eye in the sky point of view, make it easier to see and design evacuation routes, avenues of approach, and locate danger areas that require fortification. It's easier to see weak points, basically. Survey areas to find resources. This saves hiking around blindly and helps keep you safe. During drone recon, you find out there isn't anyone outside the huge Walmart or Home Depot. It looks safe, so you decide, hey, let's go in, let's get some supplies. Or the other side of that is you've got the drone up. You see there's 300 Hells Angels motorcycles in the Wally Mart parking lot, and you decide not to go to that location. Using drone for hunting, recon how game animals are moving, where they are. Drones will make it easier to find game trails, set up tree stands, and bird blinds. You can use a drone for communication, transport messages over rough terrain. Let's say there's another prepper community that you know of or that you're somehow connected to, but it's a long drive, it's hard to get there by vehicle, or it's dangerous. You tape an envelope to the drone, you fly the drone to the sister camp, and they get the note. Let's see, taping handwritten note to drone, sending to their outpost or location. Hazardous material environment. This is kind of sketchy, because I think if you're in a nuclear fallout situation, or I don't know, honestly, if you're anywhere near ground zero, I've had chemical, biological, and radiological warfare training. If you're in an area where there's been a big nuke's been lit off, it's going to be tough. That is a prepping situation I hope I don't ever face. Anyway, hazardous material environment. Drones are not affected by hazardous chemicals or nuclear fallout, as long as you can decontaminate them or consider them a one and done throwaway item. You don't want to take a drone out with a bunch of nuclear fallout when the area is still hot, and then fly it back to your camp, and it's going to be all over the drone. So you'd have to have a way to contaminate that if you wanted to keep using it. And then there's other things regarding, you get EMP from an airburst, a nuclear weapon, and so you want to make sure that you protect all your electronic gear. Kind of related, kind of not, because EMP will fry the motherboards and the electronics. It depends on what drone model you get. Some of them will carry small payloads. Some of them will carry pretty decent sized payloads. The problem with that is those units are going to be super expensive. But you could send, again, messages or really small parts on some of the drone models. If you wanted to really depend on a drone to carry payloads, you're going to have to get one of the bigger, more expensive items. And then that drone is not going to be great for recon, because it's going to be really noisy. It's going to be really big. You could use a drone to look for evacuation routes. You can use a drone for ranch management, check fence lines and livestock. You can look for fishing spots. At first I didn't think about this because I'm surrounded by water. But if you live in the Midwest, you could use this to search out, farm ponds that have huge, 5-6 pound bass in them, and you could just freaking camp out there in a bug out location and, fish until, you can't eat fish anymore, which in that situation might be when the fish runs out. So look for ponds and other bodies of water. You can look for good fishing structure and safe points of entry, especially if you're along along an ocean shoreline or the Gulf, or close to a swamp or a bayou or something like that. This is pretty cool. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. More than likely, depending on the emergency scenario, if it's super big, apocalyptic or end of the world, you're probably not going to get autonomous flight out of your drone, even if it's compatible. Not all drones are compatible with this, but the autonomous flight basically it's like autopilot. So you can set up your drone to make pre-flight patterns for autonomous security. So you could actually set waypoints around your security perimeter, and then you could set it also to come straight home. So basically, just say you've got you've got a circular perimeter. You can go around that perimeter, and then the drone will come back and it will land at your camp. But again, it's only available if you have GPS satellites that are working and running, and the drone that you get has to have the ability for autonomous flight. And there's software and there's expense involved in that, so it's not cheap, it's not free. Autonomous flight, or if your autonomous flight is only available if a drone has a capability, and GPS satellites are up and running. So that's a downside, but an upside is a lot of the people that are going to have the ability, just regular Joes that are prepping in a survival situation, the only way they're going to be able to detect a drone is with what's called a radio frequency analyzer. And if you're in autonomous flight mode, and if you're a techie and I'm wrong and there's another way to detect it, please let me know. But from the research I did and what I could find, autonomous flight is not detectable with a radio frequency analyzer, which is what most preppers are going to have. That's going to be pretty much your only option above line of sight or using your own drones to detect incoming drones. And we'll talk about that down below. But I'll talk about the radio frequency analyzer down below. But the reason that the autonomous flight's not detectable is because it's preset and it's not a pilot actually communicating with the drone as it's flying around. You're putting all the information in with the software, point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, all the waypoints, and the drone just does it. It's flying on its own based on the GPS signals coming from the satellites. I'm not going to go over 21 because we already did, but drones are good for non-prepper situations, and they're also one of those skills that is I think a good segue. My son is actually, I probably shouldn't talk about that on YouTube. There are programs out there for flying, learning to fly drones. You could actually even get I don't know if you can get a full college degree in it, but you can actually get you can get training at certain aviation colleges for drone flying. So hobby or side hustle, we went over that already. It is an expensive item. I'm pretty sure that it's becoming more competitive. I actually watched, before even doing this article a couple months ago, because I'm interested in getting a drone for my own use. I don't have one. I watched a video on a woman who does commercial drone assessment of commercial construction, and she actually started out working for a commercial construction company. I can't remember what she was. She's like a planner or a foreman or something, and the company that she wanted to work for wanted to put their own drone program into place. So she got lucky and she got to actually put this program together. But it was interesting that, and I'm guessing that this applies for most of these other things, it was interesting that to fly a drone to do surveys of commercial construction, you actually have to know the lingo. You have to know what they're looking at. Let me put it this way. It wasn't as straightforward as what I thought. So if you're interested in any of this stuff, do a lot of research before you spend any money. That was ultimately my point. 8 reasons you don't want a drone for SHTF. The biggest drawback of using a drone in an SHTF situation is the power requirements for charging. We kind of already covered that. And the GPS signals provided by satellites. An alternative charging method like solar is a must-have if you want to keep your drone running. So you'll have to plan for that. So 8 reasons you don't want a drone. They require a method to charge batteries, which in an SHTF situation, there's a possibility that the grid's going to be down. You're not going to have power, so you're going to be supplying any power that you have. Global positioning system. Again, if that goes down, you're not going to have all those cool functions that you would have the ability to have now when everything's up and running, like waypoints and autonomous flight. So basically, what happens if you lose GPS is your drone, and correct me if anybody knows if I'm wrong, but your drone basically becomes a line of sight tool. You have to be able to see it, and you're flying it around. That's basically the way it works. So even if your drone had much longer distance than that or travelability, you wouldn't be able to take advantage of it. Another downside of a drone is trackable to your location. That's one of the initial question I got on this And why I'm writing this article is because somebody asked me to do some kind of plan about how you can identify drones. Well, if you're using drones, you're in the same position. If you aren't careful flying, you could give away your location. So the only thing I could come up with on that, and maybe it's pie in the sky, I don't know, because somebody could still go back to the location, but you could have a takeoff and recover drones from a neutral location if possible. Like, don't do it from your base camp, but then somebody could find out where you're landing and taking off, and then they could track you back to camp. So I'm not sure what the solution is for that. Another downside of drones, you have a limited battery charge, so you can only cover a limited amount of territory with one battery. So you have a minimum of, well, for most drones, it's not. Some of them are around 20 minutes, but the average solid drones seem to be around 30 minutes, and the batteries and stuff are getting better every day. Another downside of using a drones in an SHTF situation, spare parts are required. Professional drone pilots say it's not if you crash your drone, it's when you crash it. So you're going to have to do repairs on it, and drone parts are super technical and not easy to make. So if you crash your drone and break a critical part on that vehicle and you don't have spares, your drone's going to be worthless. Another downside to drones, they're super affected by weather. They're most effective in good weather. You can fly some models in heavy winds, but the electronic parts can be damaged by rain or snow. The next one, they're expensive. They're not as expensive as they used to be, but they're pretty expensive. You can get drones that cost thousands of dollars. I was actually reading an article on a military drone. I can't remember what it was called, but the thing was like, I don't know. It was like this long, $10,000 a piece they're paying for them. The U.S. and the British have them. I'm not sure who else does, but they're expensive. Drones are not for the average prepper. What I mean by that is don't even consider getting a drone unless you're in advanced stages of prepping. Food, water, utilities, alternative power sources, food processing equipment, bug out locations, etc. come first. So, urban prepping. I think this is one of the top uses for a drone in the shit hit the fan situation like civil unrest. Unfortunately, drones are restricted or illegal to fly in many U.S. cities. So fly your drone in a legal area and have it in backup just in case. Regulation surrounding drones is increasing. So we're going to have less rights in regard to drones as we've had before. And I want to say there's 34 countries where drones are either so restricted they're not very useful, and then 14 countries where they're actually illegal to fly. You can't even fly them. So let's see. I'm just curious if this will play. Oh, cool. Let me see. Yeah, well, this is Portland drone footage. And this gives you an idea of, let's say it's a much bigger area than this and you want to pack out on foot. You see the cars, you see the people, you can see if there's traffic. You would know to go this way, go around, try to come back on this street. I don't know. I'm using generalities, but this is the kind of bird's eye view you can get of a situation. This could just as likely be, this core area here could just as likely be your bug-in location, your secret off-grid cabin, whatever. And you can fly this drone. You got 30 minutes of flight time, remember. So you could fly the drone around all these streets and try to kind of figure out what's going on. All right, let's stop that. And let's see. Okay, 11 things to consider when purchasing a drone for SHTF. Number 1, battery time. You're looking at average battery time for 20 to 30 minutes, but technology is constantly improving. Flight times again are increasing, but you can expect to get 30-minute flight time from the average drone battery. And remember, if you go out 30 minutes, you're not getting your drone back. So you have to have enough time left on your battery to fly back to your location. Camera quality, get a camera that's good enough to provide the visual information you need. The more capabilities a drone has, the more it's going to cost. A lot of the new drones are coming out with obstacle avoidance radar, so they won't let you fly them into a building, and they won't let themselves fly into the ground. So that's something that you should consider if you're buying a drone. Size, consider how you will use the drone for prepping. Are you using it at a bug-in location, like where you're staying, where you're at, or are you on the move and bugging out? If you're bugging out, when I say bug out, this is not a full-blown bug out. That's not what I mean. I should probably rewrite this. If you have a centrally located SHTF cabin or station, and you're going out and you're doing recon, but you plan on coming back to your space. I'm not talking about trying to get out of the city and you're going to carry this with all your food and water and supplies, your typical bug out bag. But if you're bugging out, use a smaller drone to fit in a go bag, and don't forget about the batteries and the remote. Return to base capabilities. Some drones can be programmed to return to base. Again, the downside of that, you need GPS and satellite coverage, so if the satellites are down, that's not going to work. Larger remotes give you a bigger picture and allow the pilot to see things in more detail. So if you go on the cheap and you get a really small remote that's got a really tiny screen, you're not going to be able to see as much detail on the ground. Visibility and size versus capability. Look for a drone that is harder to see during the daylight but still provides the capabilities you need. Blinking lights. Purchase drone models that have the ability to turn lights off so the drone is harder to detect. Wind rating, that's another consideration when you buy a drone. Some drones are more stable in high winds. They have like self-balancing. So if you tell a drone to go to spot X, to this spot, and the wind's blowing it sideways, the motors will auto-correct based on the GPS signal. So it might vary a little bit, but it's going to stay in that same location. Used drones. Unless you know the person selling it, avoid purchasing used drones. You never know how it's been treated, if it's gotten wet or if it's crashed, etc. And these things are super delicate. So at least the ones that civilians can have. I don't think the military grade ones are as delicate. 9 drone safety tips from the FAA. Okay, I'm kind of putting this in here because of Google, and you kind of have to. The FAA is like super strict about anything that goes in the air, and you have to follow the rules, and you have to stay away from like no-fly areas. You have to register your drone with the FAA if it weighs more than 0.55 pounds. The maximum allowable drone flight ceiling is 400 feet. Keep your drone within line of sight. Be aware of FAA airspace restrictions. Respect privacy. Never fly near other aircraft or airports. Never fly over groups of people, public events, or stadiums full of people. Never fly near emergencies such as fires or hurricane recovery efforts. And never fly under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And you can register your drone at this link here to the FAA. Excuse me. So in an SHTF situation, I don't think I have to tell you, if there's no planes flying, if we don't have electricity across the United States, if things have truly gone south, for safety's sake, you're probably not going to have to follow all of these rules, because there's going to be civil unrest, and there's not going to be anything in the sky, and there's probably not going to be huge groups of people, or maybe there will be. Anyway, you're going to have to make your own decision up in SHTF what you're going to do with your drone. Let's put it that way. Where can I fly my drone? Again, check out the Federal Aviation Administration's Before You Fly smartphone phone app that provides interactive maps showing no-fly zones for your drone. You follow this link. You can go over to readysquirrel.com, click on the article. 16 reasons a bad guy would use a drone in SHTF, and this is the kind of stuff that I just find interesting. A lot of this stuff came from my own brain, but I just tried to think of the situation. So if you guys have any other ideas, let me know, and I'll actually put them in the article. So 16 reasons a bad guy would use a drone in SHTF. You ever been cruising the survival forums reading articles about people's plans for SHTF? There's always that one wise guy that chimes in, I'm not prepping. I plan on taking what other preppers have. You can infer that this is the type of person who will use a drone in SHTF. What is that person? That person's a predator. So what kind of information could this bad guy here, what kind of information could he get from your possible prepping scenario, your bug out location, your bug out group? He could figure out how many people in your group. He could figure out your habits, when you or others are away from the survival location, the sex and age of those in the group, what kind of vehicles and weapons you have, how you run your security, weak points in the security, the best routes. I should probably expand on that, but the best routes in, probably the best routes to attack, the best routes out. They would know when you load vehicles with supplies and where to hit them. They would know when you're going on scavenging operations or coming back from scavenging operations. You know, you go to that Walmart out there that's didn't happen to have 300 Hells Angels parked in the parking lot, and you fill your caravan up with gear and you bring a bunch of lumber and stuff back to do construction. So they know when you're coming and when you're going. They're going to wait for you to load your vehicles. Then they're going to roll up on you with high-powered weapons, and they're going to take what you just spent all day loading. Scavenging operations, gardening, farming operations. They're going to know like how much food you have. You know, if you're going out in the fields, if half your group's going out into the fields to plant or to weed or to hoe or whatever, at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they don't come back until dinner or after lunch, they're going to know that. So they're going to know when to hit the operation. They're going to know how much livestock you have on hand, the equipment you have on hand. They're going to know where everybody sleeps. They may be able to track you to your offsite locations or locations of catches that you have offsite. Now, is that catches or caches? I'm not sure. So let me know if I'm saying it wrong. Tip. Plan to change up your activities in a survival scenario. Do your best to avoid being predictable so the bad guys don't come up with a solid plan of attack. Here is a little bit of, this is just another shot of some drone footage. This is drone coverage of Minneapolis. Crazy, huh? I mean, this could be, this could be you using your drone from an apartment balcony. You could be anywhere. A lot of the big cities it's not legal, but in an SHTF situation like this, if you're trying to bug out, you just never know. Oh, AutoZone, man. I love AutoZone. Okay. If you want to watch the full video, you can go over to readysquirrel.com. And I'll have a link down below in the video. Six methods to detect drones. Drone detection is a territory of military and law enforcement. There is gear to detect drones, but it isn't 100% effective, and it is illegal for civilian use, and it's expensive. Number one, this is one that the people are making stuff. There's some apps out there for smartphones and stuff, but I don't know how effective those would be in SHTF. Are you actually going to have a smartphone signal? I don't know. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. Radio frequency analyzers detect the radio signal between the drone and the pilot. Remember before when I said that autonomous drones, the radio frequency analyzer doesn't work on them? The reason is because there is no radio signal between the drone and the pilot when it's running autonomously. So that's why radio frequency analyzers don't detect a drone in that mode. A radio frequency analyzer, this is all basic stuff. You can do more research. If you are a techie and you want to try to make some stuff on your own, there's possibly ways out there to do it. Just know when you're dealing with things like radio, radar, microwaves and stuff like that, it's dangerous and it's super illegal if you're not licensed to do so. So radio frequency analyzers detect the radio signal between the drone and the pilot. The system is made up of one or multiple antennas, so you can use one antenna or you can do what's called an array, if you have the resources. And what you do is you would put antennas all over, maybe around the perimeter, and then some located within that perimeter of your bug out zone. And then you've kind of got a net of coverage that goes over the area. So again, multiple antennas in an array or that are spread out to detect the radio wave communication coming from the drone, or just one unit. And one unit's better than nothing. So the antennas the antennas grab the information, and then the information is run through a processing unit to analyze data. And you can look that up. It's pretty technical and it's beyond the scope of this article, but the downside of radio frequency analyzers is they are short range and won't detect drones flying autonomously or without a pilot. For many drone models, it's possible to preset coordinates and waypoints, including back to base. The pilot isn't communicating with the drone because it's on autopilot. Again, that's redundant, but that's flying autonomously. The drone has preset waypoints. It's on autopilot. Microphones can be used to detect drone sound, but they don't work well in noisy environments, so it wouldn't be good in an urban area. Well, I guess it depends on the situation and what the environment's like. And microphones are pretty short range. You can get a triangulation on the general direction of the drone, but that's about it. And the kind of microphones that you use for this are not within most preppers' budgets. So I would say that they're more than likely going to be useless for you. Cameras, number 3, usually used along with one of the other methods of drone detection. A video camera may be infrared or thermal imaging capability, but overall they have poor performance in bad weather. Cameras aren't very effective without other drone countermeasures. Pretty much the only things that are effective without other countermeasures are radar and micro Doppler radar. But these 3 kind of need to be used together. A video camera may have blah, blah, blah. Cameras aren't very effective with other drone countermeasures. Okay, so we're on radar. A radar is pretty much just for the military or government agency. The radar sends out a radio signal burst that hits an object and bounces back to the receiver as an echo. Radar is long range and offers constant tracking of an object in the sky. It also tracks all drones, whether on autopilot or not. Radars track everything, and here's the downside, but they don't distinguish between different types of objects. So you could be tracking a bird or you could be tracking a drone. That is if the radar has the ability to find something that small. So it depends on the size of the drone also. If you've got one of those micro drones flying that's, like 4 or 5 inches long, some radars aren't even going to pick that up. The icing on the cake for radar, you need a license to use a radar and you aren't going to get one. So also requires an alternate power source in SHTF, and that pretty much goes for radio frequency analyzer, microphones, cameras, and radio. Micro Doppler radar, this is kind of like what you see on a boat, like a boat that goes out to sea, an offshore boat. Unfortunately, you can't use Doppler radar because they must be licensed and approved. They're operated with what's called microwave energy, which is pretty nasty stuff if it's not properly used. Micro Doppler radar, they will actually track moving objects, and they will actually detect speed variations in blade movement, so you can actually determine the difference between a bird and a drone. So if money was no object and you had the ability to do it, this is probably the best drone detection you can get right there, micro Doppler radar. But this one is kind of an option, but it's not perfect. These 3 are not really options. I mean, you could use these, but I don't think they would be effective because I think the cost of the systems, the grade of equipment you'd have to buy to use those, it's not even going to be it's not going to be in the wheelhouse for us or for the average person. So your choices here, and I should have made this clear, I think really are, you can look into radio frequency analyzers and know that there's limitations. And drone. I think the drone is kind of your best defense. Let me read the article here, or read from the article. Using your own drone isn't a method of detection. Besides getting a visual on a drone, it's the only defense the average prepper community is going to have against nefarious drone usage. And let me remind you, that is at the current time, the current laws, based on the current technology. But I mean, this changes pretty quickly, so it's possible that new technology will come out. By using drones in your own defenses, you can counteract the enemy's surveillance. You can see when they approach your bugging location, and you can find their location and surveil their camp. That way you know what you're up against. Use drones at your camp so you'll be aware of any possible threats, like camps or prepping communities in your area. Maybe you make contact, maybe you don't. Drones are going to show you the types of activities going on and may prompt you to do some hidden recon. If you're being monitored, it's likely the person doing the monitoring is mobile, right? Or it's coming from one of the other camps you're already aware of. Because if if you have a bug out camp, you're going to be doing recon right around there. You're going to know what's going on in the immediate area. So yeah, I mean, it's either going to be one of the camps around you, or it's going to be somebody coming in on foot or in a vehicle. 5 drone countermeasures for SHTF. Again, pretty much no options for the average person. So I didn't put that here because it was going to kind of get convoluted, but there are drones that'll do 200 miles an hour now. They're racing drones, but if the technology is in the racing drones, it's eventually going to, it's nothing to get a drone that we can buy that'll go 50 miles an hour. You're going to have a hard time shooting that with anything at 400 feet. So I know a lot of people say, I'm going to shoot it out of the sky. Well, good luck with that. You better shot than I am. Okay, so 5 drone countermeasures for SHTF. Just an FYI, don't go around blowing drones up or you're in for a world of hurt. It's illegal. For all you know, the drone buzzing around outside your house is being operated by law enforcement agencies tracking a drug house. 34 countries have limited drones to the point that they are useless or they are outright banned for civilian use. Using these techniques is not legal in your area. As a matter of fact, most of these methods are not legal unless they are being used by law enforcement or military personnel. In an end-of-world scenario, all bets are off. RF jammer, a device that blasts the RF signal at the drone, drowning out the control signal from the pilot. Depending on the drone, it may land, return to the user, crash to the ground, or it may fly off. The problem with RF jammers is they may jam other radio signals and make the drone do unpredictable things. That's not good if there's a payload on it. You can put explosives on a drone, so that wouldn't be good if you've got a drone flying around your camp and then you jam it and make it go haywire and then it runs into your, one of your buildings or something. GPS spoofer, that's a device that replaces the global positioning system communication used for navigation. Basically, the drone won't know where it is, and the person using the spoofer can then control the device or the drone. So you fake the drone out, and your signal takes the place of the pilot or of the autonomous programming. I believe it's the autonomous programming. Maybe it doesn't take the place of that. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into it, and I don't know if I could even find that information out. So a spoofer, basically, you can kind of hijack the piloting of the drone. High power microwave. You're a prepper, so you've probably heard of EMP or electromagnetic pulse. High power microwave is similar to EMP coming from a nuclear explosion. These babies either disrupt the electronic circuitry in the drone or fry it completely. This is military grade gear, kind of like bringing a hand grenade to a knife fight. It may destroy other electronics in the vicinity. Net guns. You see these being used or suggested for use in things like prisons, so people don't fly drugs into a compound or something. Net guns can be fired from another drone or shoulder-fired cannon. It's just like netting a bird or a butterfly. The downside of the net is they have a limited range, and you have to detect the drone before you can use the cannon. High-powered lasers. These are big military-grade systems that only the armed forces will ever have. You can take down jets with these things. Birds of prey. Yes, I'm not kidding. That's real. This is a little bit out there. Some organizations train eagles to take drones out in flight, most notably the Dutch police. That particular program has been squashed. The main reason the eagles weren't following orders. So I've got some resources here. If you want to get a drone or unmanned aircraft, you need to know the rules of where and when you can fly and licensing or registration requirements. And that is going to get tighter, and that is just going to get worse. You know, if you live in a city like, say, New York City, there's 5 parks that you can fly in, and that's it. They're pre-designated. It's illegal to fly them anywhere else. Excuse me. Then some other cities, I think Seattle, as long as you're following FAA guidelines, you can fly in the city. Portland, you can fly in the city. But these laws change all the time, so you want to be up to date with what the present laws are. Here's a link if you're interested in becoming that's a typo. If you're interested in becoming a certified remote pilot, including commercial operators, check out the FAA rules here, commercial operator. To become a commercial drone pilot, you want to learn more about it. There's another link there. You know what I did was I'm letting the Grammarly do autocorrect, and it's wrong a lot of the time. So I just figured that out. So I'll check it. I'll go through and then I'll change everything, and then I'll change like the punctuation and stuff. And as I read it, you know, you go back through, it's like proofreading, and then I'll hit it. I'll just go through Grammarly and I won't read what the changes are, and it's changing stuff to be wrong. Anyway, smash that like button. Smash the follow. Give us some love. Make some comments. Get some activity going. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys, for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope everybody's safe and sound. Take care of you and yours, and I will see you next time.